Rightio.
Is it on?
It is, apparently. Apparently it's on. Here we go.
Isn't that like the classic live stream startup? Like everybody in the world.
Takes a minute, bit of a minute. Rightio, there we go. We are live. Camera's over there, remember. Hey guys, so we're live from the factory here in Auckland, New Zealand. And we are today going to be going over a little bit of advice, a little bit of pointers on buying your first set of gear. And if you're watching and you've got any questions for us, fire away and we're going to read them over here and then we will answer them as best we can. Because obviously we're doing a bit of a theme every month now, and that's what this month's theme is, getting your equipment for your big adventure. Snelly,
Where do we start?
where do we start? Well, we've got some notes here which are going to help. Well, let's start by talking about how you went about getting your first set of gear.
Okay, so I guess pretty early on in my jump career, I think I'd only got about 25 jumps at the time. It was over in Florida, and it was kind of, for me, actually, back in the day before the big Facebook groups were around, I actually put an in search of advert up on dropzone.com, I think. Just posted, hey, looking for my first set of gear, container, reserve. At the time I was looking for it's like a 190 or a 170 main, I think. So I just basically put all my details up. And luckily some dude just emailed me and said, hey, good news for you, bad news for me. He basically just got married and was about to have a kid. So he was selling off his gear, and he literally bought it. I think it was like 18 months old. And yeah, he put 25 jumps on the whole setup. So
Bargain. How
yeah,
good.
it's pretty good actually. So obviously I didn't know much about gear at the time, so I was really lucky to get some advice from the local riggers, and the guy actually brought it to the drop zone, and I had a rigger inspect everything, and pretty much it was like, buy this rig.
Yeah. So that's a really good way. I think we're going to go into some of that for when you are looking, like that temptation of seeing something that you really like online, and the only way you can check it out is if you pay for it. Generally, unless you can have people check it out where they're at, it's not really the best idea. Myself, I was a little bit different. I did the skydiving school in New Zealand, and we basically were just catered for 6 months, and then during that time, they were looking for gear for us. So my first set of gear was all sourced for me. I knew it was good because it was checked by our riggers, my chief instructor and all that stuff. And and we were good to go. I had a Javelin. I remember thinking my rig was tiny and really cool. And then it was my brother actually, who's not even a skydiver, and he was like, oh, it's pretty big. He just brought me back down to earth. I remember going to his house in Christchurch. Anyway, my first canopy was actually the old Spinetto, the old Stiletto. So I loved it, yeah. I think, like touching on the way you did it was really good, because the way you did it was you didn't just hear about it, you had a rigger and everyone inspect it.
Yep.
So that's pretty key. Like what are your thoughts on like blind buying? Like you see an ad on Drop Zone or Facebook, and you're like, boom. I know we just still do that, and you can still do that for sure, because we can get background checks, but there are risks involved because not everyone out there wants to do you a good deal, or maybe they're not super honest about the condition of their wing.
Yeah, that's always a difficult one when you're buying anything sight unseen. You're kind of going off trusting other people when they come up with jump numbers, and quite often with second-hand gear, you're not actually the second person to get it, so there's always a bit of poetic license on. The first person said, hey, I've done this many jumps. The second person says, well, I only did this many jumps. And the difference between saying it's got a couple hundred or nearly 1,000 jumps can quickly get out of hand. So buying things blind is really difficult, and even when the jump numbers are accurate, depending on where it's been jumped, condition can vary quite a lot. So depending on whether you're landing on nice grass every time, or if you're like smacking it into the desert, and things can get destroyed pretty quick. So.
For sure, yeah, where it's coming from, a bit of its history, if you can get its history. I think one of the things I think about when people are looking for their first set of gear is really you want quality over you know, how it looks, how it aesthetically looks to you. Is it pleasing to the eye, sort of thing? Does it really matter about the colours? I mean, you don't want to get the ugliest colours, but if the canopy and the rig and the parts you're buying are in really good condition, I mean, the honest truth is it's your first set of gear. So there's a good chance if you're getting quite into the sport and you're going to become an active skydiver, you're not going to keep that forever. So dwelling on colours and how it looks, you know, if you have the money to buy brand new, buy the coolest looking thing you can. Go for it. We'd definitely do that. If you've got the money and it's not an issue, then and you can wait the lead times right now, then brand new is awesome. However, like the reality is, you're not going to keep that system. You know, you might be lucky, you might get a rig that can downsize a couple of times, but even then, eventually, you know, you're gonna advance in the sport, and that rig and that canopy and the equipment you have is going to become a little obsolete, and then there's going to be someone looking for that rig from you. So, you know, I always thought dwelling on the colours and stuff isn't really important. You should be looking at, is it in good quality, is it the right thing for me, you know, and is it well looked after from the previous owner, kind of stuff. So
yeah, I was going to say, I guess following on from that as well, is when you start looking, even though when you're buying your first gear, like spot on, like you actually still want to buy gear that's in good condition, even if you're not planning on keeping it forever.
Yeah.
You've got to be really wary of equipment that's coming to the end of its life. So canopies or containers that have got heaps and heaps of jumps on, and you're like, I only need it for 50 or 100 jumps, but you've got to think at some point that equipment's either going to need a lot of money spent on it, to get it back up to speed, getting repair work done, or sadly this stuff doesn't last forever. So it's, if you're the last person to touch it and then it gets grounded, unfortunately you've kind of lost any collateral that you had in that gear. So yeah, like newer or better condition gear is definitely more expensive, but at the same time the resale is so much easier on it. So if you're skipping down through the stages, like you're taking your recommended amount of jumps on the size of canopy, but then you're downsizing, if it's got 100 jumps on it, 200 jumps, and you put 100 jumps on it, it's still going to be in awesome condition to pass on to the next person, and then you can just reinvest that money into the next size.
Yeah, for sure. And then also another thing to consider as well, this not such a big one, but if you're buying a canopy around sort of 400 or 500 jumps and it's still on its first line set, there's a very good chance you're going to have to then buy a new line set pretty well quickly when you get that wing. So, you know, it's a good idea just to take that into consideration, because there's nothing like thinking you've got this awesome deal and then having to drop, you know, another $500 to get the lines and then get it replaced. So just add another little point as well that I think is quite important for, I've been caught out on that once myself. I didn't really think about it. And then when I looked back at the communication with the person, they had actually told me, but I was just so excited to get my new wing. But yeah, just for sure another point to think about, because you know, it's like a car. You know, they need to be serviced and maintained and well looked after for them to last longer and also be airworthy. So,
I was going to say, and it just comes back to another good reason to get a rigger to check out the gear first, because essentially they're the one that's going to be doing all your inspections and maintenance and changing line sets and all that kind of stuff. So even if the person you're buying it off says, you know, it's good to go for another 100 jumps on the line set, it's always good to get a second opinion by a professional and definitely by somebody you trust. So obviously riggers are great people to kind of engage on the drop zone, but there's also instructors, those people that have been around the sport a lot, people that have got a few thousand jumps have definitely been through a few line set changes, so they definitely know the kind of things to look out for. Yeah,
for sure, and getting your hands on it is obviously key, you know. That being said, you can still make safe purchases online for sure. You've just got to have your wits about you. You can do background checks from the buyers. You can get, you know, ask an experienced person if they can have a look at the ad for you. Maybe, you know, parts of the world, skydiving's very small. Okay, maybe not in the States if you're on one side of the country and the other side, but in New Zealand, if someone's selling an item, then someone else, you know, in New Zealand is going to know that person or have seen the rig or the parachute or whatever, you know. So for sure, asking around, even if it is an online ad, because you can do the same way you can do your buyer research, you can do your seller research as well.
Yep, and there's also I never actually followed through on the purchase, but at one point I was actually looking at a container, and it was out on the west coast of the US.
Hold up. There we do it.
That's embarrassing.
Right, I'll probably still hear it.
Is this thing on? I think so. Sorry, folks. Slight technical problem. We seem to have lost lost video.
We lost video. 50%.
Turns out Stewie did not change the battery prior to the live stream. If you want to blame somebody. But yeah, so I'll keep talking in the hope that somebody can still hear me out there. We actually set up a rig to buy out on the west coast, and I actually got in contact with the drop zone that the guy was jumping at, and actually kind of did an escrow where the rigger was prepared to inspect everything and give me an on-site evaluation. Again, it was a rigger that I didn't know, but it was actually a good friend of my local rigger. So obviously, people in the sport, yeah.
Yeah, good.
There we go.
I'm back, sorry. It is only my first beer, I swear.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
So, yeah, so actually there's definitely ways that you can safely inspect and get an opinion on some gear, even if you don't get to see it. So that's definitely a possibility that you could look into.
What were you talking about? Sorry? I was obviously
just
changing the battery.
Obviously. Just using another rigger from another drop zone, just doing like an escrow, contact the local DZ where they jump at, and have the local rigger inspect it, who was actually a friend of the rigger that I was using to facilitate that. So.
Now, obviously, we're mainly talking about canopy, I guess, and rigs. But, you know, I guess when it comes to things like alties, for sure, buying second-hand is an option. But you can also, when you're starting out, you don't need the altie that has all the bells and whistles, and you can get a pretty affordable analog altie, which is more than good enough when you start your career. So there's certain things, you know, like helmets for sure you can buy second hand, but you know, how well have they been looked after? Have they been dropped? You know, do you really want to wear someone else's helmets? It's kind of gross at the same time. You know, if they wash their hair, maybe they have dreads. Sorry if that's offensive to anyone with dreads. They, you know, but things like that, and then. You know, you're kind of gambling a little bit when you decide to buy, unless you can try it on, like a second-hand suit. Again, like, if, you know, as long as you're not going to go through some craziness in your weight gain or weight loss or whatever you're going to be up to, like a brand new suit can be a nice investment for sure, you know. You're going to have that until it falls apart, really. So there are some things where you can, if you have the money, you know, we would recommend for sure, like a nice new suit. It's not only awesome to get, it's super exciting, you get it in all your flash colours, but you know, it's made for you. And I remember my first, I'm not going to say my first one actually, a couple when I went to another company, my tailored suit was, I couldn't believe how well it fit. You know, it's awesome, it fits really well with the rig, and they take into consideration when you're hiking up your leg straps and things like that. So for sure, some things I would say are worth it.
My first ever altie that I bought is the same one that I use today. It's like 12 years old. Technically, I think it's the second one. A part of the battery connector fell out, but you know what? Got in touch with the manufacturer, sent it back, and they sent me a reconditioned one.
Yeah.
That one's still going, so there's definitely some good support for that kind of stuff. Super important question, actually, there from Eric. What beer are you drinking?
Oh, that's massively big.
Peroni?
All the Heinekens are gone, and the Asahi.
It's actually just a few beers he's left over from the staff party.
Yeah, we were all a bit broken from the staff party, so people sort of left the beer fridge alone afterwards for a while. For a whole week, actually. There's still beer from a week ago. So, you know, we pushed the bird out, figuratively and literally.
Yeah.
There you go.
So have you made any gigantic whopper mistakes buying any second-hand gear?
I remember I was in Aussie and I got a 103 Velo sent over, and from one side of the country, I was working in Byron Bay, and it was my first cross brace canopy, and it wasn't like a bad mistake. It just wasn't in as good a condition as I thought it was. It was from a mate of a mate, so he knew, and he said, no, it shouldn't be too bad. But it had more jumps on than I thought, and it wasn't in as good a condition. It did need a new line set, which I pushed a little bit further than I should have. And that was more just purely because I hooked it up and I was like, I can't be bothered unhooking this. I guess I'll just buy it. And so I brought it, yeah, just through being lazy. But I think that one, I also, the art of bartering. Luckily, the guy who was selling it did send it out and got me to have a look at it before I bought it. So it was my own fault, but I just couldn't be bothered sending it back, basically. Yeah. But I think that's it. What about you?
Oh, it's probably bought a container, sight unseen.
Yep, perfect.
However, it was definitely inspected by the rigger, but he definitely said it might be a little bit on the big side. But I've been looking for a while, and I was excited because it was the size container that I wanted, canopies that I wanted to put into it.
Yeah.
It was kind of that odd time where it was just a little bit before really the low pack volume reserves came out. So I was looking for a 143 container, but for a smaller main, like a 135. So ended up buying the container, and then low pack volume, like the Optimum came out, and then boom was like, nobody wants a 143 because I can fit a 160 or whatever, or nobody wanted to buy a container that was made for a 143. Everyone was like, I can get the next size down because I can put a 143 low pack volume canopy into it. So I ended up with this container, and I got it, and it was definitely too big, like the shoulder drop. But I mean, the container was in awesome condition, but just wasn't a good fit. And unfortunately, it ended up being that odd combination of sizes between reserve and main that nobody wanted to buy anymore. So I sat on it for about 12 months trying to sell it. So yeah, that was definitely.
I have a story. Not this one wasn't about me, but this kind of comes back to also your what's TSO'd in your country might come into play. So if there's a random rig that looks, that's selling as brand new or looks brand new, and it's made by a brand that you've never heard of, maybe ask someone. I had a friend in New Zealand actually, and it wasn't the rig manufacturer, it was that specific rig size, and it wasn't TSO'd in New Zealand.
Oh wow.
He didn't know that when he brought it. He wasn't told that, and he got it, and he just had this tiny little rig, which looked really cool, and just sat in his cupboard, and he couldn't move it. So, if there's a piece of equipment, it's brands you've never heard of, there's a reason the big brands are like really popular and really trusted. Then for sure, this comes back to like asking and getting help. Right, we'll move on. What's been your best purchase so far and why in skydiving? Now, this doesn't have to be. We had a sponsored athlete answer some of these questions. Dan Guest, legend, thanks mate. And his was thermals. So when you think about your equipment, doesn't necessarily, because that's part of your jumping equipment. And if you jump somewhere where it's cold, thermals are pretty handy. What would yours be?
I was going to say, honestly, I didn't even buy it. It's actually the cardboard box that I take to the drop zone that's got all of my gear in it.
Fucking box. That box. Get a gear bag.
Just kidding.
Get a gear bag.
It does fit everything nicely. I don't know. That's a tricky one, to be honest. I feel a little bit better now. I've got a G4. Something that's actually got some kind of impact rating to it.
I think that's a good call, yeah.
Especially with some of the stuff that we do. It's definitely nice knowing that got that extra little bit of protection.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice now that more manufacturers are supplying that for sure. There's options from all the main manufacturers, and you find one that fits your head and suits you as well. So for sure, if you can get something that's actually going to protect your noggin from a knock, then as opposed to just be a camera mount that's attached to your head, which most of them are, or a lot of them are, and they used to be in the past, then for sure that would be a really good investment. What was mine? Mine was a pair of gloves, and they fell apart in the end because I wore them so much. But I used to work in Norway at Skydiving Voss, and I got them in Aussie actually, and they were quite thin, but they were neoprene jet ski gloves. They were designed for the water, but they were kind of like halfway between a snowboard and like a sort of wetsuit glove, and they were perfect. Like they keep my hands so warm. And then I think I destroyed them on landing. I was putting my hands down a couple of times and then just like ripping them apart. But for sure, I think Dan Guest was onto something when he was saying, basically anything that can help you be more comfortable in the sky or in the plane. You know, you don't want to be, if you can avoid being freezing or alternatively being like really, really hot, a bit harder to compromise or to, you know, to battle with, then for sure, I think that was, the gloves for me were really, really good. I mean, then obviously my Petra would be probably like if I was going to go into my more experienced career, when you can get onto wings like that, you buy them and you can see what they can do for you in competition, and you know when you're capable and able, then yeah, for sure. And it was shit tons of fun. So not shit, it was just shit tons of fun. Cool. And I guess for me, then we move on from that with our little question sheet here. Extras like gear add-ons. Like some things you might not need, you know, and it might be discipline specific. So for me, a really good one is on my rig, on my harness, I have a two-piece leg strap on the side on my Vector. So what that means is just a pad, there's two pads instead of the one sort of L pad. And for me, I find that really good for moving around in the harness, leaning forward and things like that when I'm swooping. So that as an extra is awesome for me. If you're going to buy from UPT, just get all the extras. Hey, Rosie, how good? Anything else?
I was going to say, it's funny you say that, but also a little bit to think about. Like if you are lucky enough in a position to get some new gear, especially containers, actually, they tend to have the majority of options that you can pick. If it's something that you're like, some people are like, I'm just going to buy this and that's mine forever. If there's ever that inkling in the back of your mind that you might want to sell it at some point, just also have a little bit of a think about, hey, what would other people like on the rig? So even though it may cost you a few dollars here and there, all you're doing really is adding to the resale value of your equipment. So if you know you're going to be selling it on, that's also a good thing to think about.
Sure.
A little bit down the line.
And actually one that just came to me as well, which is quite important, from your helmet manufacturer, a lot of them sell nothing snag free. Okay, they call it a snag free mount. And there's just reduced. To get that clear, there's snag reduced. As soon as you've got something additional added to your helmet, it doesn't matter what you do with the mount, it's a snag. And your lines, you know, if they're in the right place, will find a way to wrap around them. So, but that being said, I would still recommend, you know, if you're buying a helmet, a snag reduced mount from the manufacturer or a third party one, it's still a really good extra, as opposed to, you know, potentially just sticking your GoPro mount on. What would be the next best thing? Some helmets come with an optional cutaway, so you don't have to. I would say get the cutaway, even if you don't have a camera now, especially if you're starting out and you're going to get yourself a nice new helmet. Get a cutaway system with it, because you know there's always that chance in the future you might want to start doing outside camera or something like that. But to have that option there, you know, if shit hits the fan, I know a couple of people who have actually used the cutaway. Yeah, goodbye your helmet, but it saves their life. So.
Actually,
really
like
important.
It's becoming like more and more of a standard.
Yeah, for sure.
Or a requirement at some drop zones. Like New Zealand, especially, is quite hot on safety regulations.
Check the battery.
So, yeah, definitely think about that. Like if you are going to end up with a camera setup, some drop zones might require a cutaway if you're going to be doing outside camera. So.
Yeah, for sure. And even if you're just chucking a GoPro on, some drop zones are going to require it as well, just to do. Just if you just want to film your sick ass jump, so you can make a sick ass edit. How good.
Do you want to talk about what goes with gear? What like things are included, not included? When
What do you mean?
When you like sell a canopy.
This is a good one as well. Yeah, I've got a pet peeve about this. Okay, I'm getting personal. When you buy a high performance canopy, this is for down in the future, down the track. This is a bee in my bonnet. They don't have to come with an RDS. That's an optional extra. So if you get a canopy secondhand with a Petra and it wasn't stated that it came with an RDS, it was never meant to. You can talk now.
I don't even know how I'm going to follow that one.
Yeah.
But I guess like not so much these days. Obviously, when you get a bit further down the line, you end up with some gear that you stay on for a while. But when you are in that kind of mode of buying, selling, trading, downsizing, sometimes upsizing, I don't know, depending on what you're going into, there's always a bit of a grey area when it comes to, okay, I'm selling a canopy, what's included with a canopy? Like Stewie says, somebody's expectation is not necessarily what the person's selling the gear is on the same page about. So, for instance, like when you sell a main canopy, should it come with risers? Should the D-bag?
Yeah.
Basically, for a main parachute, whenever you're selling that, or if you're buying that, the risers D-bag is not part of it. The only thing that I would say that should come with it, that quite often I see doesn't, is actually the soft links. Don't be that guy that sends some super excited person their brand, like they're new to them canopy, they receive it and then they can't hook it up because they don't have any soft links.
Yeah.
We actually send out a set of soft links with every line set that we make, and that's basically to encourage people to change those soft links on the life cycle of the line set. So yeah, if you're sending the canopy, send it with the soft links that it's on. That way, that cycle can kind of stay in sync.
Yeah, for sure. Would you say, I think I saw something the other day, would you say that in some cases your soft links might need replacing before your lines, or is your lines good to replace, like, is it they replace them at the same time, or are there any cases where like your soft links might have gotten extra wear from where that chatter point is, especially if you're new, you're not going to pull your slider down. This is not permission to go and just do that whenever you want, but where the slider sits on the risers from that chatter, would you say there could be? I mean, it's obviously going to be on the lines as well, but
I mean, generally your line set should definitely outlive your soft links, which I think is partly why people feel this need to hang on to them, because it's like, they'll do a couple of line sets. But I mean, there's definitely potential for wear on those. They're definitely built to be a lot stronger. The way that we double wrap them through the risers takes a lot of force to break those soft links. But at the same time, I wouldn't suggest also just going out and doing 300 jumps on your line set before you ever look at it. We've definitely done talking about gear inspections and maintenance, like you should be looking at your gear constantly, never leave anything to chance. But generally the soft links are definitely stronger and longer lasting than a line set. But
right, we've got a couple of questions. RDS lanyards, what size spectra do we use?
550.
It's 550. I think it's
750.
I think it's 750. It's 750 spectra as standard. So yeah, that should last, and that as well. Actually, if you are high performance, obviously if that breaks, it generally just means you're going to lose your D-bag, which not ideal. But with your RDS, actually with gear inspection and stuff like that, and if you are a high performance jumper, like where the lanyard connects to the slider, always a good idea to keep an eye on that, because if anyone watching has towed one of those in before, when you release it, you can feel like, depending on what D-bag you've got and stuff like that, there's quite a lot of drag on it. So it's just constant wear on that lanyard, on those wear points, and also on your lines, depending on how you stow it, they are like causing friction on top of each other or against each other, the lanyards. So keep an eye on that. That's mainly, if you don't want to lose your bloody D-bag, but if you do, don't even worry about it. And then, what canopy did you start using an RDS on?
I'll take the first one. I don't use an RDS because I'm too lazy to put it back on.
The first RDS I used was on a Velocity 96. Just in case you're wondering, I did about 2,500 jumps on velos before I started jumping at JVX. So my first taste of cross-brace canopies was on Performance Designs canopies. But yeah, it was a 96 velo, or was it a Katana? Can't remember. Feel old now. I think it was a 96 velo, and and we got them made. They were custom made by the rigger from up in Brisbane, Brett Newman. Thanks, Bretto. That was when they were grommets and material. Big old thing, but it did the job. 96 velo. But with that being said, I know people that use them on obviously katanas, and some people on crossfires. We don't actually have a specific size for that, so we can't really recommend it. Does it work for them? Yeah, so it is possible to use it on non-cross-brace canopies for sure, and you can do it safely. But again, if you're going to do anything like that, you just want to speak to the experienced people on your drop zone, experienced swoopers, instructors, and get some input from them before you go trying anything like that. But yeah, Velo 96. And then the last one is, what is a soft link again?
So the soft link is essentially a small piece of spectra with a tab on it. We use that to attach the riser to the line set of the canopy, so it's essentially connecting the canopy to the container system.
It's called a soft link as well because before there were soft links, and there's some people still use them. There's a D-link that has, no, it's a repeat link, isn't it? Repeat link, and it has it screws shut. You might see them on tandems, sometimes still use them. Some reserves, I guess, older
some
canopies,
older reserves.
and some people you can still use them. We used to use them for test jumping just because it was quicker to change them, and then we decided that was silly, and that was a few years ago. So
All about the soft links.
all about the soft links for sure. They're actually stronger as well.
Yep. When we did some testing on our current set of soft links, it takes it's well over a ton to break one, and essentially you're attached by 4 of those to your canopy. So
Cool. Rightio. So we're going to cruise on now. We've covered bad purchases. All right. What would you've travelled a bit and going to boogie boogie. What's the one piece of equipment that you can't live without?
at a boogie.
If you're travelling a lot. Bye, Dan.
See ya.
Yeah. One of the guys is leaving. See you next year.
Yeah.
How good?
Can I go with, I've done a lot of travelling, and one thing that I wish I had
Yeah. Do that.
was a good gear bag. Like I had a bit of a soft, my gear bag
Yeah.
was just like a soft backpack. And to be honest, it was crap.
Yeah.
I
was
really
gonna
wish
say
that
the
I'd gone with like a proper kind of wheelie duffel bag that was sectioned out for fit my rig and my helmet.
Yeah.
So
One thing I would say, if you're travelling as well, internationally and that sort of stuff, if you're going to get a gear bag, one thing to think about is weight. There are super light ones now, which they still come with really good warranties, but they save you like 3 or 4 kilos. And anyone who's travelled around the world or around their country travelled with their skydiving gear, knows how quickly it takes up your weight, and then you're stuck trying to sneak extra luggage onto your carry-on and things like that. So
wearing a helmet.
yeah, wearing a helmet and things like that. So I would go a good gear bag, but a good light gear bag as well. And lastly, we're going to cruise on and wrap this up, I think. Last piece of advice when it comes to gear. I have one piece of advice actually when it comes to gear, and it's more with travel, or 2 pieces actually. The first one is, like we said at the start, it's your first set of gear. Even if the colours aren't amazing or someone else doesn't like them, it's your first baby. It's it's the first love of your life. That thing, no matter what it looks like, you're gonna love it because it's your first set of gear.
Right.
So don't dwell too much on how it looks. Focus more on what condition is it in, and is it the right piece of equipment for you, canopy wise, size wise, and things like that. And the second thing, if you are somewhat experienced and you travel around the world a bit jumping. Myself as a swooper, I haven't done that for 2 years, so I'm not sure if I still am. But the piece of advice I would say is we have these little canopy carry bags. I always take my competition wings as carry-on with me, so that even if I lose my bags, I'm pretty confident that at a competition I have friends who have spare rigs and backups, or even if I had to borrow one off the drop zone. But I'll always have my canopy with my risers and my setup that I'm used to. It's not as good. You get used to your harness as well, but that's my little bit that I always take the canopies as carry on, because the rig, not all airlines will allow you to travel with that because they think you're going to try and jump out at 30,000 feet. How good?
Just hanging on.
It's hanging on. Who's going to do it?
Wow. Probably my biggest piece of advice, and that goes with buying any equipment, is don't rush it. Stay safe. At the end of the day, it's better to move your way through gear at a safe pace, doing a good amount of jumps on the sides. Make sure you're 100% comfortable and confident landing that canopy anywhere, doing anything before you think about downsizing. There's no rush to get there. It's better to get there over a good period of time rather than rush it, downsize, make a mistake, hurt yourself. It's no good for anyone. So
Yeah, I mean the cliche. It's all about the journey, not the destination, and that's so very true for sure. Cool. I think we've covered pretty much. We've covered quite a lot. I wouldn't say we've covered everything. We've talked a lot.
Any last questions before we go? You want to type those in?
No, we're looking. If you do have any questions, feel free. You can always message us. You can always get in touch that way, and we're always willing to help. We do work for Aero Sports, and this is an Aero Sports live stream right now. But the one final thing is, if you are in a position where you're at a boogie or something like that, try everything. Try as many. If there's a demo canopies there, demo rigs, I'd recommend trying them all. I'd recommend buying UPT, Aerosports Cookie, and Dakunu. But try everything, and Vigil as well, and Dean, and Manufactory Sops. How good? Little plugs there for you. But no, if you do have any questions, definitely get in touch, and we'd love to hear from you. And I think that's us for now. That's pretty much us for the year. We're going to crack on to another one. So
Cheers
Merry
all,
Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll see you in the new year.
Cheers.
Cheers.